light's not too bright.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Ettinger? Here. Mayor, Mr. Pinnabone?
Here.
Mrs. Rose?
Here.
Dr. Ruggles?
Here.
Mrs. Sultana?
Here.
And Mayor Panto?
Here. Okay, we'll go on to our public hearing for the liquor transfer.
Good evening. My name is John Rogers, and I represent SAI Easton with regard to the transfer, actually the buildings across the street. It's the Square One gas station. Basically what they're doing is they want to add the sales of alcohol. As we know, in Pennsylvania, you have to have a restaurant license. They were awarded a license in the last PLCB auction. So the reason why we're here, and I apologize, because we have to go to zoning for a special exception, and we understand that, but we're under a time crunch because they won the auction, but we have to file a transfer by April 6th. So if we don't file the transfer with the Liquor Control Board, we lose the license. So that's why we're asking for approval. And it could be conditioned upon the zoning, clearly. I mean, it's definitely conditioned upon zoning, and we understand that, and we're going to go to get the special exception, but we're under the gun. So what they're going to do is, and I have plans, they're going to basically just add a cooler and sell 6-packs to go. Under the liquor code, they are required to allow for someone to drink 1 beer if they want to and sit, but they're not going to encourage any alcohol use. I have here Prince Patel and Ashok Patel. They're the principals in the Square One markets. They bought them last year. It's about 1 year now, since January, and they've been operating them. So what I'd like to do is start off. I have plans I'd like to pass out to council, just showing the property and how we're gonna configure it. And it's a very big store, so they'll have a lot of room in it. So if you go to the second page, the part, and it didn't copy as great, but in black is going to be the part that's going to be licensed. You can see there's seating in the back. We have to have seating for 30 under the liquor code, so we will have seating for 30. Like I said, we're not going to encourage people to sit and drink. We just want 1 beer. There'll be no bar. There'll be no entertainment. None of that stuff. So really, it's merely just to offer 6-packs to go. And I have here Prince Patel. I'm going to just let him testify a little bit if I could. I was asking a few questions. You want to state your name and address for the record?
Hi, my name is Prince Patel. I live in Allentown, and I manage Square One Markets.
How long have you been managing the Square One here in Easton?
Since January 26, 2024.
So we have a plan before us. Do you want to just describe how you're going to handle it with the alcohol sales?
Yes, so I don't know if you guys have been to the site, but on the right side, there's cooler doors. So we would use the same cooler right now there's 14 doors, and we would be basically using half of that space for 6-packs to go. And then there's a wall on the left side. Behind the wall, there's a storage area, which is being unutilized currently. We would turn that into the seating space for 30 to comply with the liquor code.
What are your hours?
24 hours, but we can't sell alcohol 24 hours. It's only 7 to 2, so we would shut that part out after 2 o'clock.
And Sundays, 9.
And Sundays 9 to 2, yes.
7 p.m. to 2 a.m.
7 a.m.
7 a.m. to 2.
And then Sundays 9 to 2.
Yeah.
And now, how do you propose making sure you don't serve minors?
So
That's not our concern.
It
Yes.
always is.
yes. First of all, there's on the registers we have scanning compatibility for licenses. So if it doesn't scan, they can't go through with the sale. First of all, they're supposed to ID everyone, and they will be IDing everyone, and they will also be ramp certified. All the employees will be ramp certified that will be serving alcohol, or cashiers will be ramp certified. So there's no way they can serve to minors.
You also employ Chad Vale, who is a retired LCE agent. Does he work with you guys?
Yes.
Tell him what he does.
He does a lot of compliance with PLCB. We have about 12 licenses across different sites, and he goes around, visits the sites to make sure they're compliant. He does random checks to make sure they have everything they need, the seating is right, the placing is correct, they're not selling outside the hours that they're supposed to, they're not selling to minors, stuff like that. So we have in-house compliance checks.
And does he also at times get minors to go and try to see if they're carded?
Absolutely.
Now, you said you have 12 licenses. Have you had any issues with the control board
No.
with any of those 12?
No.
Okay. You want to just give them some of the areas where you're located?
Yeah, we have sites in Bloomsburg area, Williamsport area, Hazelton area. Square One Purchase was our latest acquisition around Lehigh Valley.
And do you have cameras?
Yes, yes. We recently upgraded our security system after taking over. We have 4K resolution cameras, and they're also motion detected, and we have about 36 cameras.
And when someone buys beer, how do you make sure they don't walk around and drink outside or drink in the store?
Well, we're supposed to pack it for them. So whatever they get will be packed, and they're instructed to not consume it. As per the code, they're allowed to have one on site, but other than that, that's it. We can't serve any more than that.
And will you also post the signs in the premises?
Yes.
And I'm not sure.
As a part of a site to be ramp certified, to be able to serve alcohol, we have to have signs posted for everyone to see, and that's part of the compliance. So stuff like that is also checked constantly by Chad as part of the compliance checks.
And he's a retired liquor control enforcement officer that works for the company in their compliance department. So they have their own compliance department that actually checks out to make sure they don't serve minors or any of that stuff. And he's around, he checks all the stores.
My concern is not your six packs or selling that. That's PLCB's responsibility. My concern is your individual cans and people walking out the door and selling adult slushies. We have other convenience stores in the city that do that, and we're very concerned about that. But since we have precedent, I'm going to vote for this, but I don't want to. I don't think it's a use that as a person who owned a small convenience store for many years, I don't think it's a use that you should be mixing alcohol with groceries. But that's just a personal opinion, and I can't make personal opinions up here. But the fact of the matter is, we have an issue where I don't have an issue with what you do inside your building. That's your responsibility. I have an issue with what happens outside that building.
Mayor, if I may, I spoken to Attorney Rogers before tonight's hearing, because one of the things that in discussions with our economic development director, the recognition that this requires zoning approval was a question in his mind, but also for the applicant's perspective, the important thing, as was prefaced, was the fact that they need something prior to a certain date to protect the ability to acquire the license. So I'm going to suggest, if you're inclined, if council, after hearing from any members of the public, are inclined to approve this, that there be two changes to the proposed resolution, and because the proposed resolution gives you the background of how they get to there, and it just concludes, now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the City of Easton has no objection to the requested liquor license transfer application relative to the above applicant, and the said liquor license to wit and number provided applicant meets all other requirements of the Pennsylvania Liquor Code. What I'm suggesting is we add one recital, and I go over it later, whereas it's recognized that the use at this location requires a special exception, and then with the resolution, we'll add a paragraph, be it further resolved that this resolution is not intended as approval or recommendation of the special exception, and use of this license at 158 South 3rd Street is conditional on obtaining all required zoning approvals. So in that sense, the council will then be saying, first of all, don't interpret this that we approve what the zoning board and what the planning commission, special exception goes planning commission first, and then zoning board. So things like things that you mentioned are things that they will consider when it comes up for special exception. And I just think that the resolution, while it can, in essence, protect the applicant's bid, it should not be in any way implied that you approve it at this location. You recognize that that's going to be for the planning commission and zoning hearing board to determine.
I'll move that amendment.
I'll second.
And I'll write it out for you as needed. We also probably should put in the record, because I don't think we did, the notices that were provided prior to the hearing. What were notices provided? That had to be advertised?
Yes, they were.
Okay.
They were advertised in the paper, and we put it on social media, on the city website.
Okay. And do they get posted also anywhere?
Oh, they were posted
Not
on.
yet, zoning will do that.
Okay, so for purposes of the liquor license application, we've duly advertised the hearing. I just wanted to put that in the record.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And you can put the proof of publication in the record then also. You have, that makes it.
Okay, thank you.
John, can you come up?
Yeah, we're going to put on the record what else may have been done prior to the hearing to show that the preliminary steps were fully taken.
Yeah, so we received a complete application from,
Yeah.
my name is John Kingsley. I am
your
the Director of
position?
Community and Economic Development. I'm the Director of Community and Economic Development for the city. In the context of the application, we are required to actually route the information to appropriate, to adjacent property owners for their review and get feedback from them. We did not receive any feedback. They were also made aware of the hearing forthcoming. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. I have no other questions. I was just there yesterday. Anybody in council have any questions before I open it to the public? Dr. Ruggles.
This is just a clarification. I just don't know. So you can educate me here. You have areas in here that are licensed and unlicensed.
Yes.
And the unlicensed are surrounded by licensed. What does that mean?
Well, we have a liquor code from when Prohibition ended in Pennsylvania. So under the liquor code, you can't sell bulk items in a licensed area. So for example, if they sell cans of corn, or if they sell dog food, or if they sell windshield washer fluid, or oil for cars, or windshield wipers, or rock salt, you can't be in the licensed area. So what we have to do is we have to delineate the premises where a certain part is licensed and a certain part is unlicensed. And there has to be interior connections between the licensed and the unlicensed. And now they're allowed to use all the registers actually for everything. You used to have separate registers. Actually, when you started this, when I started this, you used to have separate companies. There used to have to be a wall between them. And then they started allowing a little bit of interior connections. Now they allow all the interior connections. Now they let you use the same registers, but it's just evolved over time. But it's because of the distinctions in the liquor code. But it'll be the same entity operating everything.
Thank you.
Okay.
I assume it's similar to the Giant, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you go to the grocery store, you don't even know what's licensed and what isn't
Right.
licensed
Yes.
because they have it all delineated. But there's actually a part that is licensed, and they can't license where they have like the food now. Yes.
That's why they have separate registers.
Any other questions? Anyone from the public like to raise your hand if you would like to speak in this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Rogers, we have the stenographer here who took down the transcript of the hearing. Is she excused to go, or
Sure.
you don't need her for the vote?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to see
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Prince?
Thank you so much.
Unless the stenographer wants to stay around for the doggy resolution.
Good to see you.
Next on our agenda is approval of the agenda. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda. Any additions or deletions or changes? Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Eddinger?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
We have no presentation to council tonight, except we have another hearing, don't we? Action on the minutes of our January 22nd meeting.
Move.
Moved in, is there a
Second.
second? Moved in second, Pinnabone, Brown and Pinnabone. Any additions, deletions, or corrections? Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Eddinger?
Aye.
At this point in our meeting, we're at public comment on agenda items only. If anyone's here to speak on agenda items only, if it's on the agenda, you can speak to it. If not, there's a time at the end of the meeting for anything concerning the city of Easton. Seeing none, we'll move on to consent agenda. There's no consent agenda tonight. We'll move on to reports received by council. There's none. So we'll go right to the reports of committees. Mr. Pinnabone, we'll take Vice Mayor Brown first, Finance.
Thank you, Mayor. This evening, we have Bill number 34 for the 285 fees, Bill 40, which is the budget 101 general fund, and Bill 41, which is the budget fund for the health and benefit. And what I have, other than that, I have our director, Mr. Snicki, and also Mr. Campo, who will be speaking to council in reference to, Mr. Snicki's not here today. Okay, so will be Mr. Campos speaking to council in reference to an update.
I can just present this under my report.
Okay, we can do that. That'd be fine.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yep.
But I'll pass this out in preparation for that.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Economic Development Committee, Mr. Pinnabone, Councilman Pinnabone.
Thank you, Mayor. We hired a new grants administrator, Olivia Bamford. We've completed the update of guidelines for the 2025 outdoor dining program. They're preparing for application round in March. The Economic Development Department began work with one of our new retail prospects and one new expansion prospect on locations in downtown. We began work on 2 business retention projects. Company experiencing significant operational issues in the West Ward. Technical assistance support. Company may be forced to relocate downtown. We have a building acquisition. And we worked on 3 grants to go out by 3/1, including a Green Light Go grant that will rebuild the intersection of Sites and West Berwick Streets on South Side. All new signals, masts, controllers, ADA ramps, and crosswalks. $100,000 to support Hooper House preservation. $85,000 for the upcoming comp plan. We closed out on Reineck Rope, the RACP, for $975,000. And currently coordinating with the Coalition for Appropriate Transportation for a community bike ride that they're hosting in Easton. And last week, we participated in the LVPC Housing Summit. Mayor, one other thing I want to mention I've been working on for a while now. I'm going to bring it to Council's Executive Committee the end of this month. What date is that? 22nd is committee. And I want to bring it up while our chief is here. I want to go over a resolution to follow Bethlehem and Allentown and 25 other municipalities in the Commonwealth in decriminalizing small amounts of marijuana in the city. That's all I have, Mayor.
Okay, next we have, Planning and Coach Committee, Councilmember, Rose.
Thank you, Mayor. The next zoning board meeting is next week, February 18th at 6 p.m. The agenda is on the city's website. I have had some questions about the upcoming planning meeting, commission meeting in March. That's on March 5th at 6:30. We are still waiting to hear back from the warehouse developers, the Wood Avenue warehouse developers, to see if they will be presenting at this meeting. So more info to follow on that. At this meeting, anyone who's interested in the proposed zoning changes, that will also be presented at this meeting. Thanks to the city administration for sharing the proposed zoning map on social media. I think that was very helpful for the public. I also attended my first Lehigh Valley Planning Commission meeting recently as a member of the board, and I will be sharing pertinent updates from those meetings as they pertain to Easton. That's all I have. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Public Safety Committee, Councilmember Ruggles.
I have no report tonight.
Public Works Committee, Councilmember Eddinger.
I have no report tonight, Mayor.
Administration Committee, Councilmember Sultana.
Mayor, there is a bill, introducing bill number 44, an ordinance amending chapter 513, construction requirement EV charging station. The other thing is Home Easton is meeting on the 20th, February the 20th. And I also want to dedicate some time for one of our longtime community members, Selena Winchester, who passed away last week. She was one of the wonderful women I have ever known, and it's a great loss to the community. She was a lifelong resident of Easton and cherished many member of the Democratic Party in our community. Selena was a prominent face at the Lehigh Valley's annual Juneteenth celebration and was very vocal about her commitment to racial justice. On this Black History Month, we honor the legacy of Selena Winchester, and my deepest sympathies go out to her, adult children, her family, and the community that loved her. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Report of the mayor. I just want to mention that for City Council, if they're going to go, I know Mr. Pinbone is going with me. The National League of Cities Congressional Conference is in D.C. I think it's very important that we go to Capitol Hill on the 12th, and I think it's very important that we visit our congressional delegation to let them know what our priorities are. I'm concerned about our community development block grant, which is $1 million, $1.2 million to the city that we may lose. So we want to make sure that we tell them all the good things that are happening with our community development block grant. The next thing is alfresco dining, as Mr. Pinbone said, does start. We're starting the application process, but there's no changes in the fees that we charged last year, but there is a change where we're in neighborhood businesses that don't have meters. There is a lower, Mr. Kingsley, why don't you come up and just explain to them why it's lower, since there's you don't pay for parking.
So one of the things we're trying to do is encourage more applicants and encourage our restaurants, mainly outside of the downtown, to participate in the program. And one of the ways that we thought we could do this was consider a reduction in the cost of participating by $1,000 if there were no meters involved in the use of spaces that would be proximate to their property. So that is the only change we're proposing in the guidelines this year. And again, it is in the interest of trying to make this more available to those who are located outside of the downtown.
I do have one comment on that. Just from living downtown where we have a lot of the restaurants participating, there were some of the restaurants that were taking up 3 spaces instead of 2, and that does really put a crunch on the neighborhood parking. It's so tight. It affects our visitors who are coming in as well. Hope we could have some conversations about that.
We certainly can, and actually the guidelines only allow for 2 spaces.
Yeah, but because of how some of them are
kind of
set,
extending over.
It's taking over 3, and that it's causing some headaches. I do love the program, but I see
Gotta
the
keep
issues
them
it's
within the
causing,
space
especially
limits.
with the development going on in the city. Parking is tight because of all of those factors, and in the warmer months we see more people downtown.
And I agree with you. We do need to kind of keep them within the space limitations.
Thank you, Mr. Kingsley. Ms.
Thank you.
Ms. Rose. I'll let Louis give an update on the stamp program.
Sure.
Okay. The 2-year budget tonight that Mr. Campos will go over does show that between now and next year we have a $1.2 million gap. I don't call it a deficit because our job between now and October 1st is to shrink that gap into a manageable position so that we don't have an increase. I also want to let you know that right now the Lehigh Waterfront Design Project is under design. Mr. Hopkins has been very instrumental in that, and that's along the Lehigh River. So we are looking at that waterfront for a major upgrade, and we want to make sure that when it's drafted, Mr. Hopkins will bring the consultant in to give City Council an update. Also about the Hooper House, nothing has changed in the last 2 weeks since we met. There was a room full of congregants here and the minister. They haven't done anything in 40 years, so I don't know why they're doing anything now. So it's a real personal ploy for me to get that project done because we're getting ready to celebrate America's 250th anniversary, and it's the only 18th century building that's not been restored in the city. All the other buildings have been restored. Same way, there's no update on the water authority, Easton Sewer and Water Authority. There's no update on that. Police chief is here. I would like to announce that we do have a good project. Hopefully, it'll come to fruition in Williams Township, just over the south side border of Easton. We did stop, and I take a lot of credit for that. We stopped the truck stop that was supposed to go there last year, and we met with PennDOT and we stopped that project. They wanted us to make Line Street one way. We said no, and we didn't like the use. Williams Township does not have a police force, local police force, so they rely on the state police, and we all know that they can't get to everything. And truck stops have been known for human trafficking and sex trafficking, and we just don't want that so close to the neighborhood. But the project that we're working on right now, we're not opposing. We're supporting it. It'll be good for the south side. It'll give us a business that does not exist on the south side. So we're looking forward to doing that. And then the last thing is, Ms. Rose mentioned about the warehouse. My interpretation from PennDOT is that they didn't get their highway occupancy permit yet. So until they get their HOP, they're not coming back to the Planning Commission. But we'll let that. We're gonna make contact with them tomorrow to find out ahead of time, so we don't give them, right now the 21st. So Dwayne, we call Scannell up and ask them if they're coming on March 5th or not. And that's the end of my report. Louis, Mr. Campos.
Okay. Mayor, as you had mentioned, I'm going to be brief on my report and just talk about the 2-year budget, but I'll include the stamp program. So the charter requires for the administration to put together a budget, a forecast budget for the coming year, and it's not as in-depth of a review as we would normally do with the regular budget. It's a forecast budget, so this is an opportunity for myself and Mark to test certain assumptions to see where we're going, and then, as the mayor said, to make sure to monitor things and to ensure that we can make whatever adjustments that we need to make throughout the year. So let me just go over a few highlights. At the conclusion of this, I will send council then the overall budget, and you can take a look at it, and if you'd like, we can talk about it again at our next committee meeting. So a couple items. Number one, as the mayor had mentioned, there's a $1.2 million gap right now for 26. On the revenue side, we were fairly conservative in general. So we kept our percentage growth numbers fairly flat year over year. So we looked at historical norms, and we didn't really go into too depth in terms of potential increases that we may or may not see. It's kind of tough to see that anyway right now. We like to have the experience of the year, or at least the next 6 to 8 months, before we can start making additional assumptions. So real estate taxes, we do see a slight increase to 2.5% in terms of growth, and we're seeing some growth, some projects both large and small. Another highlight that I want to point out is earned income tax, and that's up at 5.3%. That's a little surprising for us, and that's partly due to these large projects that are occurring. So I'll give you an example. The Marquee next door, it's meeting our assumptions for this year's budget. Our understanding is that there's quite a few of the units already under contract, and that's in line with what we were projecting for this year's budget, for 25's budget. So when they're fully filled out by next year, the earned income tax is going to be significant. It's going to be a significant bump for that particular line item. So that's why we had it at 5.3%. we're estimating anywhere about $500,000 increase in earned income tax just on the marquee project alone. So I thought that was positive. On the revenue side, and this is where I'll leave it. Oh, two more other items. On the revenue side, our bank interest, and that was coming from the ARPA fund, that was very high. Typically, we've seen around a $50,000 revenue from interest. In the last couple of years, they've been as high as $325,000, $350,000. So that's pretty significant, and that's because we had a lot of ARPA money sitting in our bank account. And this is not a surprise, but building permits, we expect those to come down. We had a run rate, just to give you an idea, around 300,000 on like a normal year, if you will. On the really good years, we've seen that double. So we expect that to come down. On the expense side, we did model out our contractual agreements with the unions. So we did have some expenses there, and some over. But in addition to that, we kept most of our expenses fairly flat. The other item which the mayor touched upon that it's something to watch is our CDBG funding. Now, not all of the CDBG funding, the amount that the mayor had mentioned, supports the general fund, but there is a portion that does. So that's something to keep an eye out on. That portion is in the tone of a couple $100,000. For example, money that goes into the codes department to help support the codes work when it's done, for example, in the West Ward specifically. That's offset by some CDBG funding. So it's just something to watch that I want council to be aware of. And then the other thing that we're watching closely are healthcare expenses. We changed brokers for this year. Things are going very well. But as a result of the analysis that the new firm was able to provide us, we had a 30% increase in our budget for healthcare expenses. So that's something that we have to watch on closely because a few percentage points could bump up, our budget by a couple $100,000. We have roughly, I think it was a $5.6 million self-insured fund, if you recall, and that's in the 252 fund. But that flows from 101, all the expenses that we take out, and it goes nicely into 252. I'll send this out, the entire budget, so you can see it in the format that you normally can see it, and you'll see the percentage increases on the columns where we make changes, and then we can talk about it a little bit more, either as a one-off or at the next either committee meeting or finance report under Mark. So that's it. Any quick questions that you may have on this?
Not a question, Mr. Campo. It's more of a comment. When we talk about the CDBG and God forbid federally it gets cut, it doesn't just affect City Hall. A lot of our nonprofits depend on that money that flows through us.
So
there's going to be a huge
majority,
negative impact.
The majority of that money will be felt in the community. That's
Right,
correct.
absolutely.
Like in the nonprofits specifically.
And Mr. Campbell, while I got you there, how's that affecting us right now with the federal government having everything froze?
It has not affected us. It has not affected the city.
Okay.
Dr. Robertson. On your line item in the revenues line, guess which one I'm going to ask about? No, the EIT.
Yes.
I'm not sure in reading that sentence what that $608,000 is. Is that just the expected increase due to new residents? Or is it a combined increase in the normal expected increase in EIT and new residents? You know what I mean?
No, the 608, that could be worded better. Like I said, Mark and I both worked on this. The 608,000 specifically is coming from the estimated income coming from one project alone, and that's the Marquise.
Okay. So the normal increase in EIT is not part of that 608. I mean, if Marquee didn't exist, we would have theoretically, we would have some increase in the EIT.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Right. I'm just asking, that increase, is that included in this 608,000?
Yeah, or the 5.3%,
Yeah.
that includes the marquee, which is 608,000
Does it
of that
include
5.3.
current? That's the question is, does it include the current amount we get?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We normally trend. I understand. We normally trend around like 3 to 4%. That's typically been our trend before we got into this inflationary period of EIT,
Right,
payroll inflationary
Right,
period.
exactly.
Because we were seeing double digits for a while.
But that's in that 608.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when I read it, I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Look, I'm just submitting this now, and I know this is just a summary. I want to talk about it more at our next meeting. I just wanted to prep you guys. We didn't have a committee meeting last night, or else we would have talked about it then.
Yeah. Just so that everybody knows, I mean, one of the things that happened this year was the fact that we lost the non-resident EIT.
Correct, but that had zero impact on the.
I understand, but I'm saying that, that increase that we're getting, we aren't getting that increase also from the non-resident too. So, and non-resident's is gone now, and this is just resident EIT.
And just remember, the non-resident EIT, the Act 205 the fee went directly to the pensions.
Right.
100%. So even if there was an increase in that, it affected the pension. Where it affects us, though, is on our MMO payment.
MMO. Yeah.
Right, and our MMO payment actually went down. Well, and that was an item that we wanted to, and I'll discuss that. The reason why that's not in here is because we have a 2-year assumption on our payment on our MMO. So it won't affect us until 27. I was concerned on the potential volatility of the markets, but overall, our pension fund has been doing okay. And we're locked in for 2 years. So we're, for this budget, we don't necessarily have, it's fixed, right? It's not a variable that we looked at. That's all I have. Stamp program, Mayor. The administration conducted interviews. We did make a selection into a preferred vendor. However, there's a slight pause because we have to wait for DCED to approve our match. That may take a few months. So once we get the approval from DCED, I'll come back and I'll know who the preferred vendor is. Things could change, so I just don't want to acknowledge who that potential vendor is. If you want to talk to me one-on-one, I'm more than welcome to walk you through the process. But we are
4 interviews were conducted.
Yeah, 4 interviews were conducted. I thought they were pretty good, but 2 were clearly better than the rest. They have a lot of success in the stamp program and also receiving additional grants from the state, 6-figure grants that could help assist us as we look for, whatever recommendations come out of the stamp program.
And Louis, DCD was involved in those interviews as well.
Excuse me, the state is involved in this entire process. Yes. So we have a representative from the state in our interviews guiding the administration. And in this case, they asked for counsel. The mayor serves on council. Mr. Pinnabone also participated in it. So it's a fairly closely watched process. That's all I have, Mayor.
Mr. Shear?
Thank you. I was a little concerned when I skipped over in the order that somehow you received an email or text, or actually I guess it would be an X statement, on the what's called the internet or whatever, that I was canceled by Elon Musk. But I guess I'm still
There's
here.
$500,000 in savings.
I tell you, give it to me now. You can have my resignation tomorrow. We had an exec session just prior to our meeting tonight, and we had an update actually on pending litigation and on some property issues, and that's the extent of my report.
Thank you. I have invited Chief Scalzo to be here tonight because apparently this immigration thing is such a big issue in Allentown and Bethlehem. I thought you would address it.
Good evening, everyone. Chief Carl Scouser, the City of Easton Police Department, 48 North 4th Street. Yeah, I had actually prepared a few remarks, and I'm not going to kind of get into it all on that. It wasn't really brought up on the agenda. But the one thing that I would ask that everyone would keep in mind is, obviously, as I stand here, very empathetic to the cause, to the purpose of why legislation like that may be considered. And as legislation like that gets introduced, very often it's looked at as you're trying to help individuals who are coming to the country, trying to find a better life and trying to get a footing and do those things. And like I said, very often it's kind of forgotten that with those law-abiding individuals who are coming here trying to find that better life, there are also individuals who come here without that good intent. Individuals here are here to commit crimes, who are here to hurt individuals, whether they be citizens or here to hurt law enforcement officers. And legislation such as sanctuary city legislation, or in this instance, welcoming legislation, again, although well-intentioned, I think can find itself kind of being used by those individuals who are looking to find shelter and commit crime and kind of fly under the radar while doing so. Legislation like that can be a beacon for those individuals to come here. It creates a real hardship for our officers. It makes the job much more difficult when trying to deal with individuals out there. The language is obscure. It doesn't really change the way that we would go about doing our job. However, it does require that our officers kind of have to have that in the back of their minds as to what they can and can't do, what they can and can't ask. And then, again, if this is an ordinance and not a resolution, then if any violation of that ordinance, then we would be obviously, there could be litigation and legal consequences to that as well. So often, I think we put all of these things first as to, the good work that we try to do, and officer safety or citizen safety sometimes gets put on the back burner, and I would ask that in this instance that not be the case. There are currently laws in place, many laws that every officer knows, whether they be federal laws as to search and seizure and even Terry stops and the right to stop individuals, to ask them questions and to interrogate. The only time that we can stop an individual and detain them is if we have reasonable suspicion to believe that criminal activity is afoot. And even when we do that, we can only detain them long enough to either support or dispel that suspicion. So there are already so many things in place. To put something like this in place, again, I think just offers a beacon to those individuals who would want to come here and potentially, again, use that language against our officers and make it much more difficult for them to do their jobs safely. Coming to the country and being in the country illegally, like it or not, is a violation of federal law. And I would ask that all efforts be put to changing that federal law if that's what's desired. But trying to ask a local law enforcement official who's out there on the streets trying to do this job and trying to handle any number of calls to try to not only navigate the call that they're on, but also navigate it while trying to determine what can we ask people, what can't we ask people, what am I supposed to do with immigration at the federal level. It's just a lot to put on those officers. I've been doing the job now for 30 years. I've been the chief of this department for 13. And I would say to all of you that it is my belief with that level of expertise and experience that the language like that, and I know it's being passed in other communities, but I believe with my again, experience, that language such as the welcoming language could really create hardships and make for an unsafe environment for my officers and make for an unsafe environment for the citizens in the city. And for that reason, I would ask that language like that not be introduced, not supported, not passed by this council. I know you have a long history and a long record of supporting immigration throughout the years through many resolutions asking for citizenship or pathways to citizenships. Mr. Mayor, I know you spoke at Dreamers rallies. Just last year, I heard you speak about the history of the city, where you spoke of the value of immigrants and the value they've brought to this country and to this city. So I know there's a long history there of supporting. I just think that when you start getting into ordinances which dictate what law enforcement can do, especially local law enforcement, when we're dealing with federal issues, I think becomes a real challenge for my officers. So, again, I stand up here very often, and I ask for the consideration for the safety of the officers doing the job. And I don't do it often, but in this instance, I do believe with the language that I've read, it wouldn't change much of what we do, but it would definitely be a beacon to those individuals who think that coming here they can fly under the radar. And those who do want to do harm to citizens or do harm to officers will use that language against us and create a real hardship for the officers in the department. So I just wanted to speak to that. I appreciate the time. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
I have a question.
Yes.
Because simple research about just welcoming city, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not to protect criminals, right?
Correct.
Or any individual immigrants who are committed crimes, right? A simple definition of welcoming city is a community that embraces diversity, inclusion, and mutual respect for all people, especially immigrants. Welcoming cities create supportive environment for immigrants and ensure that everyone has access to city services. Like we are cutting down the discriminations. I understand. I particularly I don't have anything in my mind right now because I wasn't planning to speak on it.
Understand.
But I don't know what particularly language you're referring to, Mr. Chief. But as a welcoming city, like welcoming city is just embracing a diversity and making sure that every immigrant living in this city is safe. And we, no matter what their, we as a city, no matter what their background is or what they came from and how they come from, right? We as a city don't participate within it, and that's all. Like
Right.
we don't tell federal to take the immigrants that are living in the city, right? It's just to constrain yourself or keeping yourself away from the federal, the policies that the federal is placing, like not to, let's say, not to be involved with ICE. Okay, that's the whole point of the welcoming city.
Right. And see that, and that's kind of the, and like I said in my very first comment, I'm very empathetic to the cause or the purpose of the language, and I certainly understand why you would want to put language like that forward. But you do need to understand that, first of all, we have an oath to basically not only enforce local, state, and federal law. Any federal agency, FBI, DOJ, Homeland Security, anyone that would come here and ask for mutual aid from this department would get that. We're not in the business of deportation. We certainly don't go out there with that as our primary function of seeing someone and trying to determine immigration status. That we don't do that now at all. The concern I have is not necessarily the language, because as I read it's not sanctuary city, which says we will not cooperate. This welcoming language doesn't say that. The welcoming language just basically says that we're not going to be going out there and trying to go after individuals who we suspect may be illegal immigrants. The challenge, though, becomes that language like this, when you say the city of Easton is a welcoming city to undocumented individuals who would come here, although the individuals that we're trying to protect and say, hey, we're trying to make sure everybody's safe is great, but there are individuals who will see that, and they're going to go to Allentown, and they're going to go, if Bethlehem passes, they're going to go to these places where they feel like they can fly under the radar, and then our officers are the ones who are left dealing with those individuals. And then on top of having to deal with them, we're dealing with them with this additional ordinance, or additional language, or additional law, which is often very ambiguous, where it's hard to understand exactly what we can and can't do. And it becomes very frustrating for officers because, again, they feel very constricted. It might just be a perception, but the perception nonetheless becomes reality when the officers are out there middle of the night trying to deal with individuals and find out who they are. Typically, when we think a criminal, when there's a criminal element or a criminal activity, the word they use is afoot, we then have an obligation to then detain individuals, whether they be suspects, whether they be offenders, and try to determine what's going on. And part of that is, who are you? And that's a really big part of it. And so language such as this, again, I worry first off that it's going to bring individuals here more prevalent, that they would bring them here, that we would have to ultimately deal with, who are here to commit crimes. And then on top of that, in trying to do it, we're going to be strapped with the additional layer of what can we ask them, when can we ask them. And then if we do find out that somebody does have a warrant, let's just say from another country, or a warrant or a detainer from ICE, well, then we do make those notifications. If I arrest somebody and they have a warrant from ICE, we do that now. We would notify the federal government. It's up to them if they want to hold that detainer or they want to contact the prison for the detainer. All of that goes on now. It's just up to the federal government how they want to handle it. But we can't not do those things because those are the federal laws that we're bound to uphold. We don't have the option. I don't believe the city really has the ability to say what federal laws we will or won't enforce. Again, many times, as of in the recent past, we would call for detainers and they just wouldn't come. But now they may come, but that's up to the federal government and to the prison usually when they go get those individuals. So again, the language, although I think is well-intentioned, I just think that it could create or will create in my professional opinion, a hardship for the officers, which could, again, just create another layer that could make it more unsafe than it needs to be. Again, I think we do a really good job dealing with all individuals in the city. I think everything we do is on body cameras, so if there is ever an allegation that we were out there doing something we shouldn't, all of that can be reviewed on a case-by-case basis. I think a broad-languaged ordinance, and again, the ordinance, we've passed resolutions here that support undocumented immigrants and immigration generally, and I know that many of you, I know Councilman Brown has, I know Dr. Ruggles has, and so resolutions are one thing, ordinances are something very different in that those bind my officers by law to do certain things, and when they conflict with federal law, it becomes a real challenge for my officers to have to navigate and deal with those things, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Chief,
So,
or Mr. Mayor, either one. When I read the definition of a welcoming city,
Mhm.
I feel that our city should be applauded. We have been a welcoming city. The amount of resources, when I read what a welcoming city is, it's offering resources to help people who move to this country, to help them be successful members of the community. And we do that with the mayor's support. I hosted a Hispanic Resource Month in November. Departments from the state, the county, the school district all came forward to offer resources. Our school district is amazing with the things they do in hours and after hours to help our immigrant community. We raise flags, I feel like, almost every month for different
I think the mayor put through a resolution for driver's license, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I know the council,
Yeah.
I know this city
As
very
far as
much
welcoming
supports
city, I think we're doing I can't compare us to other places, but we're doing a great job in making our immigrants and feel comfortable and have resources to help them succeed here.
And we'll continue to do our part in all of that as well. I mean, certainly, I'm not standing up here and saying in any way, shape, or form that we don't want something like this so we can go out and start targeting and doing things like that. We're not going to change a thing that we do. We'll follow all the laws and all the rules that we must abide by as we go out there and deal with the public and try to make sure everybody's safe in what they do. It's just when you start dealing with ordinances and putting things in place that we can or cannot do or what we can or can't ask and doing those things, especially when there's confliction between federal, state, and local law, it gets more challenging for the officers. Like I said, I think this is an issue that I'm hoping at some point kind of gets addressed at the federal level, and there's some guidance that we can all follow and kind of agree upon. But I just think when we put ordinances in place at this level, the individuals who really are tasked with kind of trying to navigate it are the men and women who are out there trying to do the job, and it just gets really challenging for us. And I think it puts them, again, in those moments when you're out there and you're dealing with the criminal element who wants to hurt us, the last thing we want to be doing is trying to figure out what we can and can't do based on a very specific, ordinance that's put in place that's unique to us. So,
I think Mr. Pinamon raised a very good point. Yeah, we have been welcoming cities since forever.
and we will continue
and
to be.
you mentioned how when Mayor spoke at the Dreamers Rally in 2017,
Yep.
and I was part of one of the organizer, by the way.
Okay.
I was there, and I really respect the mayor for that, and especially Mr. Roger Ruggles bringing the resolution, which is still part of my proposal, by the way. I didn't remove that, I just added it, which I have not introduced yet. But my only thing is, there are a lot of things that we are doing and we are not doing, right? Like, as a police department, right? You just mentioned a few things that you cannot do and that then yes, you can do, right?
Right.
And we being as a welcoming city already, right? I don't think so there would be any issue to put everything in the papers. Like,
And again, I think a resolution is one thing where the council says that this is something that we support. The ordinance, though, because the ordinance states that in those instances where we do have investigatory detentions going on, that we can still ask those questions and we can still work with ICE when mandated to do so. I don't think the language is the problem. I think the perception of it is. I think the confusion for the officers, and moreover, I worry that it becomes a beacon to say that we are a welcoming city here. And again, I think the term is kind of being, at this moment in time, it's supplanting the term sanctuary city. And although I will tell you, I've looked at both of those things very closely, and they are different. They're definitely, sanctuary, welcoming are two different things. I worry that they're not going to be seen as such, and then I worry that we as a city start encouraging individuals to come here who don't have the best intentions for our community.
I also think, Chief, that when we put an ordinance out there, we put another layer of law on top of law.
That's correct.
On top of another law.
That's, I think I just took the long way of saying exactly, exactly that.
So
and if-
there are,
I'm sorry.
yeah, go
I was just going to suggest one thing. I think it's a very basic principle of transactions and not necessarily law, but if I'm advising a client, there's an old concept, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if the city's doing well as a welcoming city based on its current laws, the only thing you can do is mess it up by creating other layers. Because the police department works very heavily on the use of their discretion. And as long as that department's been using it properly, it's going to be the most effective way for those people you're looking to protect to be protected.
my only concern is, and I understand your point, Chief. My only concern is, first of all, I think considering it like people or immigrants who will move to the city will definitely be criminal. Absolutely not, right?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And who will determine that if the criminals are moving here or non-criminals or law-abiding people, right? And who can determine that all the immigrants are criminal or they are undocumented, right?
Right. Yeah, it's not the issue.
So
Again,
it's-
I would even
yeah.
concede most are not a criminal element. The problem is we are seeing in our communities, and I'm sure you've read and seen as well, the Tren de Aragua gang and those types of elements get mixed into all of this, for sure that they do. And they're looking for places where they can fly under that radar. And when you put language like this out there, the perception is that the city of Easton is someplace you can come where you can fly under the radar, you can do these things. And then again, you start falling into that sanctuary kind of, the sanctuary city type of mandate where you start to like, can you ask this? Can't you ask that? Can you do this? Can you do that? And again, for the officers, we treat everybody. We treat everybody equally when we kind of go out there and we try to determine what is going on in the situation. And again, unless you're in that moment, in that situation, it's hard to explain what that's like, where just chaos is breaking out. And ordinances are very restricted to what we do. They're things that we have to train on. We have to make sure these officers have to know so many rules, so many regulations. We have 1,000-page policy manual that these officers have to follow on top of federal laws, on top of state laws. They have to know search and seizure. They have to know, Terry versus Ohio, Graham versus Connor. There's all kinds of case laws that these officers have to know because it dictates how they can do the job, and they have to be able to basically regurgitate that information in a minute's notice. And so for us, whenever we can, if we don't need to add more laws for them to have to worry about following, we try not to do that. I understand the purpose. And like I said, I think if you wanted to put something out, a resolution saying, hey, we support the idea of this, I don't think that's a problem. It's the ordinance that really gives me pause, only because it's a mandate, it's a law that we then must follow, which again carries with it legal liabilities and things like that if for some reason it is deemed that we didn't follow it in some way, shape, or form. And only a judge is going to decide that. We may think we're following it, they may think we're not. So the ordinance is where I worry that, hey, we're a welcoming city. Under ordinance, our officers are mandated this. And I think that creates problems. And I think when you're an officer and you're dealing with a situation, it's just one more thing you're trying to think about when now. And we do have instances where we have domestics and things like that, where we are dealing with language barriers, cultural barriers, and immigration statuses. And we navigate that pretty well. But it's, again, this is just one more thing that is just so binding and so restricting that, again, it's hard for an officer to have to manage.
And that's exactly why everybody in this city should be protected, because everybody speaks different languages, right? There are so many religious. There are a lot of diversity in the city, right? Easton is
It's
a diverse
a difficult
city.
job.
Exactly. And this is exactly why, in my opinion, and I have a strong opinion in that, we need to create some kind of policies where everybody, no matter where you're from, what language you speak, what religious you follow, should be protected.
Well, those things already exist.
And we are, and honest, and I just want to clarify, my proposed ordinance will not discredit the federal government's work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is something we already have been doing, right? The policies, I mean, there's no policy in place, but the practice that we have been following, right, as a city of Easton,
Mm-hmm.
that just needs to be, I think, should be mentioned in the book, and that's all. Nothing more than that, nothing less than that. No law. I mean, I don't want to, like Mr. I know Councilman Ken Brown said, we are posing, no, this, I don't wanna do that.
So
I don't wanna bring so many
you're
laws.
talking
The
resolution.
things that we are, no, ordinance, but the things that
that's
we
enough.
are already following, the policies, like, I mean, I know there's no policy in place, but let's say there are policies in our brain that we are following.
Well,
We
no,
are
no, no,
not-
there's so many federal laws, and like I said, there's so many things as far as the behavior of law enforcement, what we can and can't do, what we can and can't search, when we can and can't detain. There's so much that we are bound by. I think what you're trying to do is you're trying to put that into another place, which again, although may be fine, it just creates another thing for the officers to have to concern themselves with. We've been following and teaching our officers and training and holding them accountable to these things for many, many years. And so it's not like there's not things in place. You are putting another layer on top of it, and we are doing it, but we're not doing it because, we're doing it because we have to do it this way. There are many, many protections for the citizens of this country, whether constitutional, whether federal law, state law, and even local law to some extent dictate what we can and can't do when we encounter individuals. And so,
Chief, let me just stop you. Our police department has done a great job. Think about the last 20 years and what this department was like and what it has been in the last 20 years. And how many lawsuits we don't get anymore because we treat all people the same. I can't stand that we're here trying to do an ordinance to protect illegals. These people commit crimes. We don't want crime in our city. I mean, if you vote for this ordinance, you are voting to have crime in your city, because I agree with you. You're going to welcome them to the citizen because they're going to fly under the radar. I'm sorry. I get very passionate about this. This department worked too darn hard during the last 15 years to bring it about, to become a premier status accredited program department and bring the violent crime down to almost nothing. We had no homicides last year. We had none. Bethel and Allentown can't say that. We can say it. We can say we're the safest city in the valley. We're doing it right is right, Mr. Brown. And you know what? To sit here and say we're going to have an ordinance? No. You want to do a resolution to welcome immigrants? Who does more for immigrants than myself? I mean, since I was a teacher, I had students who came to my class who couldn't speak English. In September, by the end of the year, they were speaking fluent English. And they were from all over the world. I mean, anything that's going to put our police officers in harm's way should be voted against. And I agree with that.
I think we can get behind something as a resolution. A resolution just saying we agree to something. But when we get into ordinance, now, as I said earlier on, it becomes another layer of law. And I don't think we want to tax our officers to the point where they got to think off the cuff. Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Is it right or wrong? But just adding another something to your policy. That's simple enough. That's in my opinion. That's my opinion.
Chief, how about if we sometime when you are available, we can sit together and talk on languages? Because I mean, I do have a lot to say, but of course we have other things to do today.
Sure.
Because and one thing is like very clear. I want to clear out, like, not all the immigrants are criminals.
Who said that?
And
No one said that. Don't put that out there. No one said that. No one has said that from this table or in the audience that all immigrants are
doesn't
criminals.
mean we are welcoming criminals. So that should be clear.
I hope I'm not coming across
and
it.
definitely, we can sit together and talk about the language.
Yeah, I hope I'm not coming across and saying that. That's certainly not my intent. It's just that, again, the reality is that with all of the individuals who are great people, good people doing those things, we do come across those individuals who don't have that good heart. They are here with bad intention. And I'd rather not indicate to those individuals that the city is welcoming, which I fear would be the case. I do fear that those individuals are looking for places where they feel that they can survive and commit those crimes. I'm not saying that everybody is that. I'm just saying that with ordinances like this, you could create that environment. That's all. But I would be happy to. I'd be happy to.
We'll definitely sit together and talk about the languages. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay.
Moving on, unfinished business, Madam Clerk.
Bill number 38, An ordinance approving an agreement between the City of Easton and the Redevelopment Authority.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any comments?
Yeah, Mayor, I'd just like to point out, this has been an open piece of blacktop on the south side for, man, has to be 20-plus years,
Oh, it's more than that.
more than that. So I just
It was a
appreciate,
playground when Porter School was still there.
That's true.
I wasn't here.
Well,
I wasn't born.
he always brings that up.
Well,
Poor
I have
soul.
to. But no, I appreciate the city and the redevelopment authority for now going to put affordable housing on that lot. It's much needed, and I'm thankful that it's happening.
Roll call.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Bill number 39, an ordinance amending sections of Chapter 285 fees.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Bill number 40, an
know that.
ordinance amending Budget Fund 101, General Fund.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Bill number 41, an ordinance amending Budget Fund 252, Health Benefits Fund.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Moving right along.
No new business.
Mhm.
We have a resolution approving the transfer of liquor license to Easton LLC.
So moved.
Is that gonna be moved as amended?
As amended.
You're gonna need an amendment. Do you want me to
I-
just read it again?
I made the amendment, but we should do that.
But we
as
didn't do it
amended.
formally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we need to.
So just make it as amended.
As
As
amended.
amended, okay.
Dr. Ruggles?
And Joel, you'll send me
Yeah,
that
and
wording.
second and then amended.
And
I made the motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call. Now we're gonna move the amendment.
Yeah.
I'll amend you according to Mr. Shear's.
Yeah, if you want me to
paragraph.
quickly, I
Second.
quickly reread it.
Yeah,
once,
please.
'cause
and I'll second it before you read it.
Okay, and we're gonna add one recital before the now therefore clause, so we'll read, whereas it is recognized that the use at the 158 South Third Street location will require a special exception. And then we would add, after the now therefore be it resolved paragraph, we'd add a paragraph, be it further resolved that the resolution is not intended as an approval or recommendation to grant a special exception to use this license at 158 South Third Street, comma, and this approval is if I may, to grant a special exception.
Mr. Shear, you can take till tomorrow. I don't care.
Yeah, well, anyway, the gist of it is to grant a special location, a special exception for the license at that 158 South.
Hello,
Third
Mr. Musk. How you doing?
and that to operate at that location is a condition of obtaining all the zoning approvals.
Did you steal a can, Joel?
Excuse me?
Did you take a can from over there?
So we have a motion and a second on the amendment.
On the amended version. Okay, we moved in second on the amended version. We're gonna vote on the amended ordinance or amended resolution.
Okay. And Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
And Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Moving along to our favorite
No,
dog
you gotta
park.
You gotta vote on.
Oh, we're gonna move on. We voted on it as amended.
We
No, we
amended?
voted on the amendment.
Oh, then okay.
Oh, okay.
I thought we did that.
Hold on. Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
We have a resolution naming a dog park to be located in Scott Park, named the Daniel E. Cohen Dog Park.
Mayor, I make a
We didn't approve it.
You haven't voted yet.
we, Mayor, I will make a motion with a thank you and a congratulations to Mr. Danny Cohen.
I second it.
There's a second, and I would just like to say that I've known Danny my whole life. I first met him when he was 50 years ago. He was the solicitor for the Redevelopment Authority, him and Norman Seidel. And I was just a young college student working a summer job for the Redevelopment Authority, and I used to see him walk his dog to our store, so I know he loves dogs. And I just want to add that at the bottom of this, now therefore, we also urge that the sign be stating that it's a Danny Cohen dog park, because I don't want to see Danny in here playing with the fire hydrant.
I also just like to congratulate Danny for an omen's job that he's done in this city. And it goes without saying that he loves the city and he loves the people in his city, and that he would do anything and everything for people. I witnessed myself. He's well respected and well loved. Congratulations, Danny.
Call a question. Dan, you want to come up to the microphone? It's being zoomed and telecast, so we went. Oh, there he is.
Oh.
I want to thank you, and I think I certainly prefer a dog park to a life-size statue of myself in Center Square. Gloves on. Gloves on.
I have a question, Mr. Dan.
Full disclosure.
But thank you.
Mr. Dan, how many dogs have you raised?
Oh, this is my fifth.
Nice.
Arnie, how are you? Good.
Thank you all. Appreciate
Thank you.
Congratulations, Danny.
You look
Thank-
good.
it. For an old man, yeah.
I guess we got to approve it now.
Yeah,
Okay.
Danny, congratulations, and I just want to thank you for all your community work over the years. It doesn't go unnoticed, and I even hear from Project Easton, I know you're on their board, how much you mean to them and how much you've done there. And I think this is going to be a great addition to downtown Easton for all the city dogs to enjoy. I'm looking forward to it. Betty and Archie can't wait to get there.
Thank you.
Yeah, the dog park is going to be a real hit
It's
downtown.
downtown, yeah.
I want to thank Dave for thinking of that and putting it in down there, and it'll be there by warm weather.
Be a good addition to the market.
Yeah,
That's very true.
with all the young kids moving downtown, they all have dogs.
We need to vote on it.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
You ready?
Don't forget to vote
Okay.
on it. Yeah.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
We have a resolution authorizing DCED to apply for the PennDOT Green Light Go program.
So moved.
Second.
I just want to make an amendment, and it doesn't even have to be an amendment, just a friendly amendment, that it should say Easton DCED, because DCED, everybody
Yes.
thinks is state.
Yeah, that's true too.
Okay.
Frankie, you put that in there.
I did not. Kingsley.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
We have bill number 42, an ordinance amending chapter 554, shade trees.
So introduced.
Second. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Um,
Yep.
Bill number 43, an ordinance approving a 20-year contract between the City of Easton and Safe Harbor.
So moved.
So moved. Mine. So moved.
Bill number 44, an ordinance amending chapter 513, construction requirements.
So moved.
introduced.
Shouldn't those be introduced?
No, move.
Just,
Well, if he moves, got a
they're-
Oh,
second.
introduced.
They're introduced.
Okay.
Yeah.
we have an agenda, we have a resolution approving an agreement with DCR McGuire, Inc. for
So moved.
Second.
David, what bridge is this? The Human Park Bridge?
Yeah.
Oh, Abbott Street.
Abbott.
Okay.
Okay. Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
We have a resolution approving an agreement with Omnis.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Resolution authorizing Easton DCED to apply for a municipal assistance plan to update the comprehensive plan.
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second discussion, roll call.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Ms. Sultana?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Ettinger?
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye. Any other business coming before city council?
Artie.
Any public comment? Artie?
Artie.
Four.
I missed the last meeting of city council.
We noticed, we put you down as being absent.
Well, I'm sorry. Anyway, Karen was happy to help me go online and find the meeting, but the problem was the video. I couldn't hear what was said in the first column. For some reason, either the sound was bad or my hearing is bad. I know my hearing's bad, but it was just
We put signs on everybody's microphone that they have to speak into the microphone,
Yeah, that's
so
a
they've
good.
heard.
That's
Okay.
a great idea. To speak in, put a sign that says "Speak into the mic."
I got two of them.
Yeah. Joel has one.
Second thing is, you mentioned Reineck Rope. I didn't quite get what that was about.
Let me go back to my, report. Actually, Mr. Kingsley's here. Mr. Kingsley, can you please explain that?
It was related to the closing out of a grant that we were the grantee, the initial grantee for, and Lafayette College was the sub-grantee. It's a redevelopment assistance capital program grant that was in the amount of $975,000, and all we were doing was letting council know that we had closed that.
Mrs. Volcano, I didn't recognize you back there. You were hiding.
Want to be recognized.
You were hiding. Well, thank you for coming, and you're welcome anytime.
Good to see you, Sandra.
The next thing, which I didn't, thank you, Chief, I appreciate it very much. The next thing I didn't understand, I know there's a zoning meeting on the 18th in February, but you mentioned March 5th. You didn't say what that was going to be.
March 5th is planned.
That's the planning meeting.
Oh, the planning, okay,
Yes.
I got it, planning. And the last thing I'd like to say is that I still can't hear what when you're commenting on, I hate to say this, Ms. Sultana, but
Sorry.
really, okay, thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ravitz. Anyone else in the public like to address city council on anything affecting the city of Easton? Comments, questions, concerns?
Good evening. My name is Samuel Santos. I reside at 37 North 5th Street in Easton, Pennsylvania. City Council, Mr. Mayor, good evening, and I appreciate your time tonight. As many of you know, I'm a pastor at the Rock Church of Easton in downtown Easton, and this evening I stand in representation of my church on behalf of the Rock Church. And so I have a few things I would like just to discuss, or rather hopefully find some clarification. So I just have some 4 points, and for any rebuttals anyone is willing to speak. As many of you know, the church is in the middle of litigation with the city of Easton over the historic Hooper House as well as surrounding buildings. And so this evening I would like to speak on the eminent domain actions against our properties, including the Hooper House and surrounding buildings. And I hope tonight that it doesn't fall on deaf ears. I stand before you today not just as property owners, but as stewards of our community, defending our constitutional rights, our religious mission, and the integrity of our city's governance. This case is not simply about a building, it is about fairness, due process, and preventing government overreach, in my opinion. And so 4 points I would like to go over. My first point here is that eminent domain must serve a clear and public use. The city's claim the Hooper House is blighted and must be restored. However, the city has failed, in my opinion, to prove a compelling public need justifying its seizure. Firstly. Secondly, preservation efforts do not justify eminent domain, especially when a property owner is willing to work towards restoration, which we as the Rock Church of Easton are, and the city itself has recognized the Hooper House as historically significant, which it is. So why is it now? Is it being taken instead of supported? Now, I do understand that, Mr. Mayor, we did have a meeting with you about a year and a half ago, for which we walked away from your negotiating table, and I just still to this day do not understand why is it that when we chose to walk away from the negotiating table that now we're being attacked. I mean, I can say that the church did not agree with the funding as far as the strings attached to the funding, which is, and to my understanding, it is our right as private citizens to walk away from that. We did set up a 501c3 for the historic Hooper House, as well as separating the property from the Rock Church of Easton so that the property would not come into conflict with church and state, but yet I feel that we are still being attacked. Now, the alternative solution still exists. The city could collaborate with the Rock Church on a preservation plan instead of resorting to this forced seizure. Now, my second point that I would like to point out to us this evening is that there are religious property protections under the RL, UIPA, and constitutional rights. This is not just a legal seizure, it is a constitution. This is not just a legal issue. In my opinion, it is a constitutional issue. Under the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, 1, the government cannot impose a land use burden on religious organizations unless it has compelling interest and uses least restrictive means. Eminent domain is the most extreme action, and it is not the least restrictive means. Taking property from a religious nonprofit to serve a government interest sets as a dangerous precedent, in my opinion, for many faith communities in this city. And so my question for us tonight is, what does it say about our city when the government seizes land from a church that has faithfully served the city of Easton for over 40 years, including my family? Now, my third point here tonight is that the city's actions show bad faith. Now, I understand that this is in the legal process, so I do not expect anyone to make comment on this evening. These are simply my opinions, and they do not have to be commented on. The legal process must be transparent and fair, but in this case, and in my opinion, the city moved to change the deed on another church property before court proceedings even began, which is not just improper, but potentially unlawful. The city originally passed a code inspection on one of these properties known as the Timothy House, and then later deemed it unfit. So my question is, why is this sudden change in plans if the property was deemed fit? And my third point here is that instead of negotiating in good faith after all this has happened, we did say you could take the Hooper House, but apparently there wasn't enough. Why, instead of negotiating in good faith, the city has pursued a heavy-handed legal battle against a nonprofit church such as ourselves, obviously with limited resources, for we are not a rich entity. And so in my opinion, this is not a partnership, this is bullying against us. My fourth and last point this evening is that the church is willing to work with the city. We have repeatedly tried to engage with the city through our lawyers, through Mr. Rust, and also through Attorney Selwa on a solution. We were willing to discuss the Hooper House, but we were, in my opinion, blindsided by the attempts to take multiple properties. And I will say that actually is a question of mine. I don't understand why the eminent domain came out. It doesn't make sense to me why it happened when we did do all the things that we were doing even after we left the table with the city. My second point here is that we do not have the financial resources to fight a prolonged court battle, which I'm very certain the city of Easton does know, as we are not a large church. But we should not have to fight to keep what is rightfully ours, and we ask the city to work with us, not against us, to preserve history and to protect religious liberties. Now, in closing, as I respect our time here tonight, in the closing appeal to the city council and to those who are here tonight, if you're watching online or here with us, eminent domain is not a tool to be used lightly. May I continue for 30 more seconds?
Yes.
Thank you. Eminent domain is not a tool to be used lightly. It is certainly not meant to be used against a church that has served this community for decades. We ask this of us tonight to, if we could halt the eminent domain proceedings, return to the negotiating table, and seek a solution that respects both historic preservation and religious liberties of churches like ours. We are not just fighting for our church, we are standing up against what we believe for property rights, fairness, and faith institutions across the city and country. So we urge you to do the right thing. We ask that you would work with us, not against us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. I won't comment on it because it's in litigation, but it's not a forced seizure. 2 years ago, we retained outside counsel to outright purchase your property, and it was just a singular property, it wasn't all three. But with eminent domain, we must take all three because it's all on the same parcel. But,
But is it within the, so if we say no to you,
If I may,
I
you know,
know.
Pastor Santos was gracious enough to actually give you the legal advice that I would give you, which is you make no comments whatsoever, because even what you said is going into an issue that you really need to consult with your attorney,
well,
which
they
is
make
Jeremy.
it sound like we just did this.
It's
We didn't do it. We tried to buy it initially.
we have a long history of that being on the record now that it is in court. We have counsel, the invitation that was made just now, everybody heard it. You can always work behind the scenes, but the discussion at this point can only compromise the position and the legal process. So I think it's, I appreciate hearing everything.
Thank
but
you,
I
Mr.
think-
Shear.
I
You've
think
heard
it's
it
over.
before.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Anyone else like to address City Council?
Good evening. My name's Gary Nielsen. I live in Germansville. I was here last month. I came just out of curiosity to see what was going on because I heard about it in the news. I didn't mention it last time. I'm a pastor as well. And so what I'm seeing here now that I'm learning a little bit more about this situation, I feel that this is government overreach. I feel like it's wrong what's happening. I feel it's unjust. And I just wanted to go on a record that I'm here to stand in support of Rock Church and stand in solidarity with them, and go on the record as saying that I think what you're doing is wrong. Yeah, okay, you were in negotiations, but you know, from what I understand, the title and the deed of the land has actually been transferred over into the city. If you've taken possession of the land without giving them fair market value and going through due process, you're in breach of the Constitution. So everything that I'm hearing about this, it just seems like you guys are on the wrong side of the law, and you're doing something that's just wrong and unjust. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's not a discussion, but just so everyone understands the process. When under the eminent domain laws, you file what's called a declaration of taking. That moves the property to the municipality or the government entities that is allowed to make such a taking into their possession, so-called. But due process is fully in place because the owner has a right to file preliminary objections, as has happened in this case. And then the arguments that have been presented are all presented before the court, and the determination is made as to whether the taking was proper or not. So that nothing is happening, I mean, other than safeguarding it, nothing happens until there's a final decision and due process plays itself out. As far as any takings, as far as fair market value goes, the owner is protected through the obligation to pay for fair market value. And and that's initially offered in the taking itself, but as part of the appeal process, beyond preliminary objections, is the ability to have a board of review to independently determine what is the fair market price. So there are these layers. This is not debating the merits, it's just explaining the process.
Thank you, Joel. And that was also explained a few times publicly. So thank you for explaining that again.
Anyone else?
I just have a quick mention, Mayor. I just wanted to let everyone know that tomorrow at 6 p.m., the Easton Business Association will be holding a ribbon cutting for Old Mecca Cafe. They're located at 527 Northampton Street near Two Rivers and Easton Yoga. If anyone can make it out at 6 p.m., it's a quick ribbon cutting. If not, if you can't make it, please stop in and welcome them to the city. We're expecting a coffee shop, bakery, and art gallery space, so I think it'll be a great addition to the city.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone on City Council have any others?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, is there a
Second.
Second? Roll call.
Aye.
Mayor Panto?
Aye.
Mr. Pinnabone?
Aye.
Mrs. Rose?
Aye.
Dr. Ruggles?
Aye.
Mr. Brown? Mr. Brown?
Yeah, they did.
They can't
have
find
dinner.
it.
Dinner.
Mr. Brown?
Hey,
Did? Okay.
Yeah.
And Mr.
Aye,
Thomas?
aye.
Kathy Brown